All right, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for weather where you are this morning. And of course, all eyes on now Tropical Storm Debby. The storm just downgraded to that tropical storm status as of the 11 a.m. update from the National Hurricane Center. But regardless of the downgrade in intensity, it is still forecast to bring really, really intense flooding to southern and coastal Georgia, and of course, tropical storm force wind gusts to parts of southern and coastal Georgia, which could lead to downed trees and power lines. But this overall is going to primarily be a flooding event for the coast, as this storm, not only did it downgrade to a tropical storm, but its forward speed slowed from about 12 miles per hour to now only moving at 8 miles per hour. And when storms slow down, that is not a good thing. These storms produce very heavy tropical downpours, and when they slow down, that only increases the rainfall rates and ultimately the flooding threat, which we were expecting. This storm is expected to stall along the Georgia coast in the coming hours. And that does look to still be on track. So places like Savannah potentially on track to pick up record rainfall. We'll talk about everything you need to know. So here's the latest radar loop on again. Now Tropical Storm Debby. It did make landfall around 7 a.m. in the Steinhatchee, Florida area, which if you can remember back to just last year in 2023, they had a direct hit from major Hurricane Idalia, and that was in late August. So it's been less than a year since they've experienced a hurricane, and now here they are again dealing with what was Hurricane Debby when it made landfall. But once storms go over land, that cuts off their life support. They really need that warm and moisture-rich environment that is the warm waters of the ocean. And once it goes over land, it's not able to go through its cycle in order to strengthen, and it shakes up that core, that center that you see as the eye of the hurricane. It shakes it up, and when storms aren't vertically stacked, they ultimately weaken. That friction from the land naturally tears storms apart. So this will continue to maintain tropical storm status as it moves through Georgia, and it will continue to move into South Georgia, and then ultimately it will move into coastal Georgia later tonight as we go through the coming hours here. So again, this radar loop showing you the latest on Tropical Storm Debby, and I'm going to put my correct max in here because I'm clicking the button and it's not moving, and I'm wondering why, and that is exactly why. So let me put the correct one in there, and we will move right along. I believe this should put me in the right spot. Maybe yes, maybe no. Please hold. Give me 2 seconds. Let's see. There and there. Bingo, that's what we needed. Okay, so again, Tropical Storm Debby moving off to the north-northeast at 8 miles per hour. Let's rock and roll, shall we? All right, so here's the latest forecast cone from the National Hurricane Center. This also brand new. Again, this information just came out around 11 a.m. Notice going to maintain that tropical storm status as it makes its way into South Georgia and coastal Georgia tonight into early tomorrow morning. It is expected to move off the coast Wednesday, which will potentially give coastal Georgia a brief break from the really heavy downpours. But then notice you see that cone start to curve back into land. It could make a second landfall along the South Carolina coast, and as it does so, that will increase that rain chance for parts of coastal Georgia, coastal Carolina, yet again, bringing very heavy rain. So not only are they going to deal with the heavy tropical downpours really starting this morning and all through the day today and tomorrow, but they could get a second round of that even after the storm moves off the coast and back inland Wednesday night into Thursday, where it will maintain that tropical storm status all the way into late week before continuing to weaken and move up the coast on Friday, which is when these areas will finally get a little bit of a break. Here at home, our impacts are extremely minimal. We're going to talk about that first, and then we'll go into the coastal impacts, which again is where the impacts are going to be the greatest. So this afternoon, what you'll notice as you're leaving work, maybe picking up the kids from school, for some of them the first day, maybe a few isolated showers. And if you do happen to get any rain, that is associated with Debby. The storm is going to continue to spin in south and coastal Georgia, and we could get a few of those wraparound showers, but just some isolated heavy downpours will be possible. When it comes to cloud cover, you'll notice an increase in that as well, especially from Atlanta off to the south. The closer you are to the storm, the slightly greater your impacts will be, but the impacts, regardless, very minimal. Notice at this point, from places like Cherokee County, points north, you'll be mostly sunny. So again, the closer to the storm you are, the windier it's going to be and the more cloud cover you'll experience through the day. Temperatures with the cloud cover and also that breeze today will generally top out in the upper 80s to near 90. As we head into the evening tonight, that storm will be moving into South Georgia. And notice places like Eatonton, Putnam County, you'll have the greatest impact from this storm because, again, you are closer to the coast. And so tomorrow morning, you could get some slightly heavier rain as Debby is making its way into the Savannah area tomorrow morning. But most of Metro, in fact, all of Metro should be dry tomorrow morning and through the late evening tonight. In terms of wind, we're not expecting any tropical storm force wind gusts. That's considered 39 miles per hour or greater. We're generally going to look 15 to 25 mile per hour gusts through the day today, with slightly higher gusts the further south you go. So places like Eatonton could experience gusts closer to 30. And then again, as that storm continues to roll along the coast and kind of parallel us here in Atlanta, we will pick up those gusts just slightly. So notice tomorrow morning as you're heading out the door for work, maybe back to school. In Atlanta, we could experience gusts as high as 20, but the further south and east you go, places like Athens, Covington, Griffin, over at Oglethorpe, Greene County, Putnam County, over towards Eatonton, you could experience gusts 25 to 30, maybe slightly higher tomorrow morning into the afternoon hours, as again, Debby is going to move into the Savannah area and kind of stall there for almost 24 hours, if not a little bit more. When it comes to the coast, let's take you through what this storm is going to do. So I showed you the forecast cone, but let's show you a forecast model. This kind of gives you a better picture of the storm itself and all of the heavy rain that's going to occur. So on the right side of these landfalling tropical systems, you're going to not only get the heaviest rain, you're not only going to get storm surge for coastal communities, but you're also going to get the potential for severe weather. So within those outer rain bands on the right side, places from Tampa, which parts of central Florida, I've already seen a handful of tornado warnings this morning, all the way into Jacksonville through Tybee, Savannah into Charleston. There's a severe threat for them today because you could potentially get not only some very gusty wind, but also maybe a brief spin-up tornado within those outer rain bands on the right side. Notice on the left side of that storm, a completely different picture. You get sinking air on the backside of storms, which brings us sunshine like we're seeing right now. So drier on that backside, which thankfully we are on in the coming days as the storm moves very slowly inland, then ultimately stalls. So 4 o'clock this afternoon, again, maybe a stray shower here in North Georgia, but very heavy rain continuing from Jacksonville all the way through Savannah into Charleston. And the rain really started as early as 5 a.m. in the Savannah area. So taking you a full 24 hours in advance, notice coastal Georgia still experiencing extremely heavy tropical downpours. That's going to lead to that flooding threat. Just last week, Savannah was already flooding just from afternoon thunderstorms that were producing extremely heavy rainfall rates. The mayor said that their kind of drainage system there can handle rainfall rates of about 2 to 2.5 inches an hour. This is going to produce like double that. So they are not going to be in great shape when it comes to the flooding potential. And First Alert Meteorologist Cutter Martin is actually going to Savannah, so he'll show us some of those live images. But if you've ever visited Savannah when you had a really healthy, heavy downpour, I know I've been there for that, and you walk along River Street quite literally turns into a river. And so I do expect that to happen with this storm. Taking you further into time, as we make our way into Tuesday evening, into Wednesday morning, notice that's when this storm starts to go off the coast. So this is going to be that brief break for coastal Georgia. It's going to be Wednesday morning. But at this point, flooding is already going to be happening. Flooding is going to be likely at this point. They're already going to have picked up between about 5 to 7 to 8 inches of rain, if not locally heavy amounts. And then as that storm wobbles back inland, notice places like Charleston, Savannah, St. Simons will get another round of that heavy rain as the storm potentially makes a second landfall mid to late week. Here's a look at the rainfall totals through the weekend, because again, this storm is going to kind of linger and at least impact the coast through late week. So we could potentially see rainfall totals exceed a foot along coastal Georgia. And I think this is even being a little conservative. Places like Savannah could pick up between 10 to 15 inches of rain. They haven't experienced rainfall totals like that since Hurricane Matthew, which was back in 2016, where places like Edisto Island, South Carolina, they picked up just under 17 inches of rain. Savannah picked up about 12 inches of rain. And if you go back and look at images of that, the towns were flooded. People were literally going through the streets in kayaks. So very similar to that. But this storm, because of how slow it's going to move and how it's going to pretty much stall, does have the potential to create higher rainfall totals than that and ultimately create rainfall totals from a storm that this area has never seen. So you probably have seen the headlines, and we've been talking about it throughout the morning, historic rainfall potential for Savannah. It is possible that that happens. But again, models kind of outputting about a foot to maybe a foot and a half of rain possible along coastal Georgia and South Georgia as well as we make our way through the coming days. Here's a look at that severe outlook that I mentioned. So again, that unfortunately does come with the territory when it comes to being on the right side of tropical systems. So you're already dealing with the wind. you're dealing with the heavy rain and flooding. If you live along the coast, so places along coastal Georgia, you have all of those little kind of bays that sit along the coast of Georgia. They're expecting about 2 to 4 feet of storm surge. Now, mind you, a lot of those homes that are built on the coast there are on stilts, so 2 to 4 feet of storm surge isn't going to flood those homes. But essentially what storm surge is the ocean enters into the land. You are essentially one with the ocean when the storm surge rolls in. And so the ocean comes to you is probably the best way to say it. So 2 to 4 feet of storm surge, you're talking 2 to 4 feet of water moving inland, 2 to 4 feet of the ocean moving inland, which is why a lot of times in those coastal communities, you do see those homes higher up to account for that. So not only are you dealing with the flooding, you're dealing with the storm surge, you're also now dealing with the potential for severe weather. So a whole slew of issues with the right side of landfalling tropical systems, but this one in particular that's going to move so slowly and ultimately stall, potentially creating historic flooding for that area with the potential for upwards of 15 inches of rain, maybe even more in the coming days. So again, severe risk from Tampa all the way up to Charleston. So what to expect here at home today, kind of putting it all together for you. I know I just threw a lot of information at you. Higher wind gusts today. We're talking 15 to 20 mile per hour gusts, maybe 25 the further south and east you go. Increasing clouds through the day, especially from Atlanta south. A lot of us will see a lot of sunshine today. And then we'll see the chance for a few isolated afternoon and evening showers that'll wrap around Debby as she continues to roll through the state. Coastal impacts, 10 to 20 inches of rain possible along the coast from South Georgia coastline into the far southern part of the South Carolina coastline. Storm surge 2 to 4 feet. Wind gusts 25 to 45 miles per hour, and then severe weather with isolated tornadoes all possible. So again, here at home, our impact's extremely minimal, but unfortunately a very different story if you have family or friends, or if you're lucky enough to have a vacation home along the coast. Flooding is likely if it's not already happening, severe weather possible, and then of course there's also that additional storm surge risk, which it's not the highest it's ever been along the coast, but 2 to 4 feet of water moving inland, that's definitely nothing to play with. That will of course flood the streets on top of the rain that is falling from the sky. So again, First Alert Meteorologist Cutter Martin will be in Savannah later today giving you live reports, so be sure to tune in here on Atlanta News First Plus. Also on all of our on-air platforms later today, all of our shows, you will see live images of that, and we'll be sure to bring you live reports as Debby continues to make its way into Georgia right now. Not currently officially passed into Georgia yet, but it is expected to do so later this afternoon. Thanks so much for joining me for Weather Where You Are. All the updates on Debby, by the way, can be found on the First Alert Weather app. We have a story specifically for Debby if you want the latest updates on that, so be sure to have that app downloaded. Make it a wonderful Monday, everyone, and we'll catch you here next time.